The photograph smelled of chemical developer and basement damp. Archivist Margaret Holloway adjusted her bifocals and lifted the Polaroid from its acid-free sleeve. September 1977, Concordia Cemetery, Kansas. A christening party. 47 people gathered beside a white tent. One infant, 7 months old, stared at the camera with dark, unblinking eyes. The back of the photo read, in pencil, Baby Richard, June 1977. 39 years later, that same infant would stand trial in a Wichita courtroom, accused of 10 murders. He had hidden in plain sight for 4 decades, photographed dozens of times by people who had no idea what he would become. In February 2005, Wichita, Kansas, a 60-year-old church usher named Dennis Rader was arrested in his driveway while loading groceries into a brown Dodge minivan. The arrest ended one of the most frustrating serial killer investigations in American history. For 31 years, BTK, bind, torture, kill had haunted the communities of Sedgwick County, sending taunting letters to newspapers and police stations. He had killed his first victim in 1974. He would ultimately be convicted of 10 murders spanning 1974 to 1991. But the case that would consume internet forums for the next 2 decades began not with Rader's arrest, but with a photograph discovered in an entirely different investigation. 3 months after Rader's capture, a retired Kansas Bureau of Investigation analyst named Thomas Wedge was reviewing cold case photographs at the Sedgwick County Archive. His assignment? Digitize pre-1975 case files for the new digital database. Between stacks of 1970s burglary reports and missing persons files, Wedge discovered an envelope marked only with a case number, 77CH1142. Inside was a single photograph, a family gathering, a baby in a white christening gown, and in the background, partially obscured by a folding chair, a young man of approximately 20, standing with his hands at his sides. Wedge recognized the face immediately. It was the same angular jaw, the same deep-set eyes he had seen in court sketches for the past 3 months. He picked up his phone and called the district attorney's office. The line was quiet for a long moment before anyone spoke. The photograph had been filed under an unrelated 1977 child custody dispute. A social worker named Paula Vance had photographed the family home as part of her welfare assessment. She had no connection to the Rader case, no reason to look twice at the young man in the background. Her notes, found in the same archive, described the scene with clinical detachment. Residence adequate, family cooperative, 1 infant present. She had photographed a baby and captured something else entirely. A young Dennis Rader, not yet 23 years old, standing in his parents' backyard. He would not commit his first confirmed murder for another 2 years. The photograph, preserved by accident in a stranger's case file, had frozen a moment from the life of a man the world did not yet know was dangerous. Kansas authorities were cautious when informed of Wedge's discovery. Prosecutors had already built their case against Rader using DNA evidence, witness testimony, and the famous letters he had sent taunting investigators for years. A photograph from 1977 showing Rader at a family gathering was, legally speaking, largely irrelevant. It proves nothing about the crimes, a spokesperson for the Sedgwick County District Attorney told reporters in May 2005. It is not evidence in the current prosecution. But the photograph was leaked, investigators never determined by whom, and by June 2005, it had circulated through law enforcement networks nationwide. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Who had taken the photograph? Why had it been filed under an unrelated case? And most unsettling, how many other photographs of a pre-murder Dennis Rader might exist in archives, basements, and family albums across Kansas? A follow-up investigation by the Wichita Eagle newspaper revealed that at least 3 additional photographs of Dennis Rader from the mid-1970s had surfaced in the months following his arrest. One showed him at a church picnic in 1975, holding a plate of potato salad. Another captured him at a local school fair in 1976, watching children play on a carnival ride. A third, provided by a former classmate who wished to remain anonymous, depicted Rader in a high school yearbook photo from 1974. Each image, when examined closely, showed a young man with an unusual stillness, an unchanging expression that several psychologists would later describe as effectively flat. A forensics analyst at the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit noted that, in retrospect, the photograph suggested a deliberate quality to his self-presentation, as though he was always performing for a camera he knew might someday be examined. The mainstream explanation was straightforward. Serial killers do not appear suddenly as adults. They have childhoods, adolescence, early adulthood. Dennis Rader had been a Boy Scout, a Lutheran church member, a Cub Scout den leader. He had married, fathered 2 children, coached a youth soccer team. In community photographs from the 1980s and 1990s, he appeared alongside neighbors at block parties and church potlucks, his smile wide, his eyes ordinary. The 1977 photograph, according to this view, proved nothing except that Rader had attended a christening in his 20s. This is the human tendency toward post hoc pattern recognition, wrote criminologist Dr. Harold Davies in a 2006 analysis. We look at a known killer and search for warning signs that were invisible at the time. The photograph tells us what we already know. It reveals nothing new. But several details in the 1977 photograph went largely unexamined. The christening party photograph showed not 1 infant but 3 children under the age of 5. Rader stood approximately 4 feet from the nearest child. His hands, visible in the original high-resolution scan, were ungloved and relaxed. His posture was erect, his gaze fixed not on the baby being christened but directly into the camera lens. More critically, the photograph's original negatives, discovered in 2011 inches, a storage unit belonging to the late social worker Paula Vance, revealed an image that had been cropped. In the uncropped version, Dennis Rader appeared twice. He stood in the background of the first frame. In the second, taken seconds later, he had moved to the foreground, closer to the infant. The reason for this movement was never explained. The uncomfortable question that the mainstream narrative avoided was not whether Rader had attended a christening in 1977, it was whether the christening itself had held any significance for him. Among Rader's known victims, 3 were children under the age of 10. His first confirmed victim, a 15-year-old named Nancy Fox, had disappeared in January 1974 while walking home from a friend's house. His stated motivation, detailed in his handwritten confession, included references to purity and innocence and the corruption of the untainted. The 1977 photograph captured Dennis Rader at a ceremony dedicated to a newly born child. Whether by coincidence or intention, he had inserted himself into an image that symbolized everything he would later claim to desire and destroy. Today, the 1977 photograph is archived at the Kansas Historical Society in Topeka, catalogued under case file 77CH1142, the same number assigned to a child custody investigation that concluded without action 4 months after the photograph was taken. It is available to researchers by appointment. The infant in the photograph, identified only as Baby Richard in the original file notes, never been publicly identified. His christening party guests have not come forward. And Dennis Rader, now 69 years old, serving 10 consecutive life sentences at the El Dorado Correctional Facility, has never been asked about the photograph in any recorded interview or court proceeding. The image remains. A moment frozen in silver halide and light. A question no one has thought to ask.